Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is Mitko Karshovski, and welcome to episode 96 of That Remote Life podcast, where we hear from location-independent entrepreneurs and professionals so you can learn to quit the cubicle and live life on your terms. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Tom Rogers, the co-founder of AdventureInYou.com, which is one of the top 15 travel websites in the world. Tom grew up in Wales and after finishing a degree in aerospace engineering, decided to go backpacking where he met his co-founder and girlfriend, Anna. In order to fund their travels, they decided to start a travel blog and Adventure in You was born. Tom and Anna have built an incredible business around their website, and during this episode, we got to dive in deep on exactly how they've been able to create such a popular and successful business. We talked about why blogging is such a tough business and how to create an effective strategy that allows you to win in an otherwise extremely competitive industry, why it's important to diversify your income streams, and how to keep a cool head when things go wrong, which will certainly happen at some point in all businesses. And we even discussed some of the more nitty-gritty details of running the business, like where the revenue in the business comes from, how they've been able to hire the perfect people for their business, how they set goals and determine what everyone on their team should work on, and much, much more. Guys, I'm serious. If you want to build a business around blogging, this is the episode that you want to hear on. We talked about a ton of things, and I think you'll find it really valuable if you do want to be a blogger or make money off of affiliate income. We did mention quite a few resources during this interview, including Tom and Anna's amazing course on blogging. So make sure you check out the full show notes over at thatremotelife.com/episode 96 to get access to those. Now, before we jump into the episode, I would love to hear what you think about this podcast. I made it very easy to leave a review. All you have to do is just head over to ratethispodcast.com/TRL and write your review. That's it. It's that easy. If you're enjoying this podcast, leaving a review is one of the best ways to support it. Reviews are still a key statistic that Apple, who is basically the only person in the playing field still for podcasts, it's still something that Apple looks at in order to determine how to rank a podcast. So your review will directly help us climb the rank boards and attract new listeners. So thank you in advance for leaving a review if you choose to do so. Once again, if you want to check out the full show notes and a list of the resources mentioned in this episode, you can do so over at thatremotelife.com/episode 96. That's episode all spelled out, followed by the number 96. All right, you guys, without further ado, let's dive into this interview with Tom Rogers from AdventureInYou.com. All right, Tom, welcome to the show, man. I'm super excited that we got to connect.
Yeah, cheers for having me. I'm excited too.
Cool, man. So our friend Nathan connected us, and the way he introduced you to me was he said, you got to meet this dude, very business-minded, very cool guy. And he said the thing that really caught my attention. He said that you have one of the top 15 travel blogs in the world. Is that right? Or is Nathan just kind of, spewing crazy facts out there?
Bigging us up. No, I mean, we were in the top 15. I'm not sure where we are at the moment because of the current situation with COVID. That list fluctuates. But we've sort of been hovering around between 25, I think 25 to 10 or 12. 12 is our best position for like the last 2 to 3 years now. So I'm not exactly sure where we are at the moment, but yeah, that's about right.
That's really impressive because for me, when people tell me that they're starting a travel blog, I always go really? Because for me, that is it sounds like such an amazing business, right? Like you get to travel all over the world and you get paid to do it. But as it's super competitive. You really need to know your stuff. And it's the sort of business model that I wouldn't really touch. And when people tell me oh, I'm starting my first business and it's a travel blog, I'm like, oh boy. So why did you decide to go and start a travel blog as opposed to any of the other number of things that you could have done?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's because So to explain that, I'll have to take you back around 6 years ago now when we first started. So when I first started traveling, that's where I met my partner Anna. So we were both solo backpacking. We met in Vietnam. We had a travel romance, and then to cut a long story short, we started dating again when I went to the Philippines. And my plan was to sort of do a whole year and a half trip. I was going to stop in Australia about halfway, get a job in a bar, top up my funds a little bit, and then carry on. But because I met Anna in my first 6 months, I decided to, when I got to the Philippines and we started dating, I was offered a job in the Philippines in a tech startup. So I was like, okay, well, it's better working in a tech startup and I could learn more here, top up my funds, and then go traveling. So that's what I did. I started working in that company while we were dating. And then what happened was after 8 months, I was ready to go traveling again. I'd saved up some extra money and was still on my sort of trip. Anna had spent all her money on a master's degree in teaching. So she was like dead broke. And she was like, look, I really want to go traveling again. But I think at the time, the exact number was something like she had less than $2,000 to her name. Like I think it was about 1,700 US dollars or something, because we spoke about it before. But she was like, I'll do it. Like I'll quit everything and I'll come travel with you. But I need to make money on the road. And I was like, okay, well let's start looking at ways to make money. And this is before I didn't know the word digital nomad. Like about 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago, I did not know that word at all. And I was pretty interested in the tech startup world, but I wanted to travel. So then Anna was reading all these blogs online. She was always reading travel blogs. She loves to read blogs. And I just remember, I was at home. She came back from work one day and she literally opened the door. She burst in and she was like, Tom, I know how we're going to make money online and how we're going to be able to travel. And I was like, really? Well, tell me. She's like, we're going to start a blog. And this is actually a true story. At that time, I said, what's a blog? I'd never even heard of it. It's just not my thing. I don't really read blogs or research like that. I more just go with the flow. But I was like, okay, well, show me what you found. And she found this article by a guy called Johnny Ward, who ran One Step Forward. He's still a big blogger today. And at that time, he had posted an article about making $5,000 from travel blogging, $5,000 a month, and that blew us away. So that was sort of what got us to start, and then we just went full into that. So really, I started it without knowing anything about businesses or picking a niche or keyword research. I didn't know any of that. We just needed to make a way to make money online. So we just jumped into travel blogging. And then over the next couple of years, failed a lot, learned a lot, realized what we did wrong. We niched down, et cetera, and eventually figured it out and built Adventure New to where it is today.
So I think that's interesting because I know several people who've gone into a specific type of business not knowing how hard it would be. And they've said to me before, like, if I knew what I know now about it, I probably wouldn't have gone into it. Did you have a similar like experience where it's sort of like your what you didn't know about the industry and how scary and difficult it is was almost like the reason why you started it, right? Was that you weren't like, well, here's all these reasons why I shouldn't do it.
Mm-mm. I think I'm actually pretty grateful that I didn't like I that I didn't know that stuff and I did it, because I wouldn't want that to put anyone off. It is still competitive, but people can still build a successful blog. They just have to be a bit smarter about it and pick a niche down. The issue we had is when we first started our travel blog, it was so wide. We were one of those people that blogged about Bali, and then we blogged about Thailand, and then we blogged about a trip in the UK. It was just way too wide. When we niched down and focused on one area, that is when we start to grow authority. So yeah, I'm glad that I just jumped in and didn't get sort of frozen within action, if that makes sense.
I definitely want to dive in a bit more on the niching because I do agree. I think that is where, like, our friend Nathan, like foodie flashbacker, right? He kind of focuses on this like niche of like traveling and food. And I definitely want to go into that a little bit more. But before we do that, where do you think, travel blogging is going to be as an industry over the next couple of years? Because I have a lot of friends who are travel bloggers, and when COVID hit, I was like, oh my God, like they're going to get decimated. So where is the industry at right now from your perspective? Has it recovered? Do you think it's a thing that people should start working on now? Like, just how do you feel about the industry now during COVID, and like, where do you think it's going to be in the next 3 years? Do you think it's a good investment for people?
Okay, so where we are now, I guess where we are now, not all travel blogs are decimated. It depends what, again, what country you're focused on, or if you're focused on domestic travel, or there's some things like glamping and stuff that's taken on over here. So some travel blogs are okay. The majority of them are struggling. Adventure New has been hit really bad because we mainly focused on Asia. So we were mainly focused on Southeast Asia content. We had a lot of traffic from the US, a lot of people planning their gap years. So when COVID happened, that really affected our business. So yeah, in terms of where we are, we saw 70% reductions in revenue during this time for the last 8 months. And I got to be honest, when it first happened, I thought we might have 6 months of this and then maybe bouncing back, but we're still not seeing that. We're still at the low point. And now I'm thinking, yeah, where we are now, we're still at the low point, and I'm thinking we're in this for another probably six months, maybe 9 months, until the vaccines are fully rolled out and everyone's fully going again. But I mean, to get Adventure New back to where we were before, I'm expecting probably another year and a half. That being said, if someone's starting now, is it a good investment? I think, again, the game has just changed to when I first started. If someone's starting a blog now, they have to first learn about keyword research, like before they do anything, and then learn about finding a strong niche and really focus in on that niche. You can still build a wildly successful travel blog now, but it's going to look different. It might be domestic travel. I don't know, for example, like Mexico is opening up at the moment. There's a lot of people coming in from Mexico. So we've shifted a lot of our content strategy around that. I don't mind revealing all our all our plans, but yeah, we're focusing a lot over in the countries that are opening up now and focusing our content on there. So yes, I still think it's a good investment because it will bounce back up. It will bounce back up, and travel's still going to be a thing. It's going to change ever so slightly. But the one thing I would say is, obviously, it depends on the person's situation. If they need to make money within the next 6 months, then a blog is more of a long game. A blog is something to do on the side. If you are freelancing or if you're working in an agency, start writing a blog on the side, because then 6 months, you'll see a couple of $100. 12 months, you'll see almost $1,000, and then it'll start to snowball alongside you. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. I think a blog is like a long-term investment, while like if you do need, like, if you are like, hey, like you said, I need cash now, I think like something that's far more direct, like selling your services, freelancing is a really good way to sort of, you know, create an income while you build that blog to live the passive income dreams at some point, right?
Yeah.
And I totally agree. I I think recessions are really difficult for big businesses that are established, but can be the best thing for up and coming businesses, because those big businesses may lose some ground, and you can kind of almost like, um, you know, you're more nimble. You don't have as many expenses. So in many ways, like, moments like this are the best time, I think, to start something new.
Yeah.
What did you learn about, if there's one lesson that you learned from adjusting in this sort of period and kind of thinking on your feet, what would that be?
That's a good question again. For me, the way we adjusted, so we have two businesses. So we have Adventure New, which is the travel blogging business, and then we have Blogging Fastlane, which is our education company and teaches all about affiliate marketing and SEO. Basically, when we started our blog, we probably wasted around 2 years doing all the wrong things, and then in the next 2 years, sort of came from nothing to being one of the best, like one of the top, and grew our traffic to, at its peak, almost 750,000 per month. So what we did was take what we'd done in those 2 years, and we were like, okay, we messed up in the first 2 years, but the second 2 years was, we learned a lot. We actually learned a lot from the digital nomads in Chiang Mai. We started networking with affiliate marketers and email marketers, and we applied that to the blogging world. So yeah, I forgot a question now, but what
Yeah,
said?
how did you, because I think that what happens is, like, as an entrepreneur in moments like
Oh,
these, there
yes.
will be moments like this, and you
Hmm.
need to almost learn to adjust, right?
Yes.
And that's one of the big differences between new business owners and people who are seasoned is they've
Hmm.
seen this, they know how to react, they know what to do. So what are
Yeah.
some of the lessons that you learned
Okay,
from
sorry.
this?
I lost my trail of thought, but now I know what I was saying. So yeah, we applied all of that to Blog and Fastlane. So where I was going with that was that when COVID happened, we had two different companies. So we had the travel blogging, which went, 70, 80% down when it happened. But we had an online course company that boomed because then suddenly everyone was
Mm-hmm.
at home. So what I learned in that time was, to take it relax, take a breath, and then assess like what is your runway, what's your profitability, do you have to make short-term decisions or long-term decisions? And that's what we would tell our students, like, okay, this has happened, where are you? Do you need money instantly? Then you need to make some short-term stuff and do some freelance work or consulting work or change very quickly. Do you have a runway? If you do, then think, and then don't worry about the market being down right now and focus on the longer term stuff. So for us, we had a runway. So we were able to move our team, all of the team that were working on Adventure New moved and started working on Blog and Fastlane. They all started working on that. And they worked on that for, I think, just under 6 months. And then we shifted them back over to Adventure New. So the main thing I learned is to really look at your runway and decide, yeah, are you able to make long-term decisions or short-term decisions, and then go from there.
Yeah, I also think you kind of touched on two things that I think are important there that I want to highlight. Like the first one is having multiple streams of income, especially ones that are like that can be diversified in a way where if things are going well, that business is doing well. And if things kind of take a hit, then the other business can help out. Like I have a friend who has a business in language learning, and then he has another business where he makes chocolate. He has a chocolate factory, and he's like, I'm great because everybody wants to learn a language when things are going well, but when things go bad, everybody buys chocolate because they want to like like make themselves happier. So he's like, I'm great either way. Like one business is gonna like take over. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And the other thing you mentioned that I want to get your opinion on is to when things kind of go boom,
Hmm.
relax and take a breath.
Hmm.
And that sounds simple and it sounds very like intuitive. Like, yeah, that makes sense. But I find that a lot of people panic. And when you're panicked, you make bad decisions. So
Yeah.
do you have any sort of tips for people on like when shit hits the fan, how can you like remain calm to make good decisions? Do you have anything that you do or like any kind of way to make sure that you're staying calm in those situations?
Mm. Yeah. Okay. So again, it depends on where that person is in their entrepreneur journey and how their financial situation is looking like, right? So first, I'll talk about where I am now and how I sort of dealt with it. So obviously, right now we're a little bit more comfortable. We have a runway, we have some savings, we have some investments. So when this whole situation happened, I'm big into meditating at the moment. So I took more time than usual to meditate and think to myself. And I think it's sort of realizing, well, worst case scenario, everything's okay. Everything's absolutely fine. It's a business at the end of the day. It's not life or death. We're still traveling the world, living this incredible life. If profits are low for a couple of months or a year, or we don't make as much money this year, then it's fine. The way we look at it is we have a set amount every month that we need to make to live the lifestyle that we live. And as long as we make that, that's the main thing. So when everything was going down, like I said, we do have a very sort of diverse incomes. I quickly realized that although we were going to be doing a lot less profit than we were the year before, we were still going to be covering our costs. We were still going to be able to live like we are now. We were still be able to keep the majority of our team in place. So it was okay. We were able to take a step back. But obviously, that's easier for me to say. I'm like 6 or 7 years into my digital nomad journey. I've got 2 companies. I've got some savings. If someone's brand new and they've just gone all in on a business and this happened, then obviously that's a bit of a tougher situation. But I think, again, just taking time to reflect and realize that, again, this isn't life or death. Like the majority of the time, you've got a little bit of savings or you've got family you can go back to or whatever if something does happen. If they did need that immediate income, I would then look for client work or look for short-term work in order to help get you through this situation. But I think reflecting, meditating, realizing that to be honest, we still have it good. Like we still have it really good compared to a lot of people out there. That's the main thing. It's perspective, right? There's a lot of people out there who lost jobs, who lost family, who, have mortgages and really big things over their head. For us, we're digital nomads. We have two backpacks and not much overhead. So yeah, I mean, business wasn't as good this year in some aspects, but in hindsight, it's all okay. So just taking the time to look and get a different perspective on things, I think is key.
Yeah, I think, before we hit record, we both talked about how much we love Naval. And I think he's the one who has mentioned before, and I love this thing is like, our brains were evolved to, you know, be anxious about the tiger around the corner, right? Because the tiger's gonna maul you and kill you, right? And our brains still look at things that way. So everything is a tiger around the corner to us, even though when you think about it, it's really not. And like you'll be fine. And that's why I think Tim Ferriss became really famous for having this like fear setting exercise where like, okay, like let's write out the craziest, deepest fears that we have about like what could happen. And when you kind of put it down on paper, you realize like this is actually like not that scary. Like at the end, like I'll still be fine on the other end. Like I'll still be alive, I'll still be healthy, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think that's a great kind of exercise to do.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to how you perceive things, right? How you interpret the situation. And for me, if I'm ever feeling anxious or I'm starting to be a bit more panicked or stressed, it's because I'm not taking the time to meditate and actually like reflect on things. And like you said about the fear stuff there, one of the exercises I've started doing now, I found myself, I had like money limitations. I had certain money limitations. I didn't think it was possible to make more than, 30 grand a month or whatever. I had sort of caps that I didn't realize. And one of my mentors told me to start setting fear goals. So he did what you said. He would get me to write my biggest fears, like what was stopping me from scaling my businesses or growing. And then aim to actually do that. So if I wrote a fear, so for example, we do a lot of Facebook ads. If my fear was, oh, I don't want to lose, $20,000 on Facebook ads in a month, which is why I'm scared to scale them, he would actually make me write that out and then make it my goal to actually lose that money. It sounds a bit counterintuitive, but
Hmm.
what you find is if you've made that your goal, then majority of the time, you don't hit it. But as you're moving towards it, you start to see like, oh, this isn't as scary as I thought. Or like, oh, actually, I'm doing well, or I'm doing better. And every time I've set those fear goals and challenged myself to try and hit them, yeah, we've always done much better that month.
Yeah, I recently heard a really interesting theory that I think comes from like Japanese. The Japanese always have these awesome business concepts. And I hadn't thought about it, but it really aligned really well with like my journey. And what they talked about was the fact that there is this trend in business of it's called the ones and threes or threes and tens. I'm not quite, I don't know if you've heard of this before, but essentially what they're saying is that at every multiple of 3 and 10, when you're growing a business, you need to shift what you do. So, for example, just to make it really simple, what got you to making $1,000 a month won't get you to three, and what got you to three won't get you to 10. And so they essentially talk that is a really interesting way to, when you see yourself coming up to this, you need to readjust and change what you do because what worked until now won't anymore. And
Yeah.
so I do think that that's one of those things where you need to actually sit down and, like you did, say like, "Hey, I'm making $30,000 a
Mm.
month. If I'm gonna get to 100, I need to like really look at those fears and figure out what it is that I need to adjust."
Yeah, that was exactly it. I realized that the only way to double that or triple that was to spend a lot more. But I was uncomfortable spending, $5,000 a day on Facebook. That was alien to me.
Right.
I didn't want to lose, X amount. So yeah, writing that down, making those your goal, and sort of changing up the situation is exactly what we needed to do.
So I want to rewind a little bit
Hmm.
because I do know a lot of people who are listening to this who may want to start a blog, who want that sort of business. And you mentioned earlier on that you said that for the first 2 years when you guys were growing your business, you were kind of doing things wrong. And then the next 2 years you adjusted and you started doing things the right way. What was that adjustment? What did you change?
Yeah, 100%. So when we first started blogging, we would blog about everything under the sun. It would be about co-working spaces or hotels or where we were traveling at the time or whatever, and different countries. It was just really wide. When we went to Chiang Mai and we met a few digital nomads, they introduced us to, like, I got introduced to proper affiliate marketers, proper email marketers, and everything. And they showed me how to niche down or to do keyword research. So some of the things we adjusted on was, first thing is we thought, okay, what is our blue ocean? We always talk about this a lot, blue ocean, red ocean. Have you heard about those terms? Yeah.
I have, but
So
can you go over it?
yeah. So it's just a simple marketing sort of niche thing. So red ocean refers to, an ocean full of sharks where everyone's trying to eat the same thing, high competition, there's a lot of blood in the water. Blue ocean is this open space where you can go and there's not as much competition. So the whole idea is try to find your blue ocean, try to find that space because it's going to be easier to grow in. So at that time, that was one of the first things we did. We were like, right, we've got lots of content all over the place. What is our blue ocean and what can we focus in on? Now, at the time, this was around, I think, 5 years ago or maybe 4 years ago, we had a lot more content on Thailand and traveling around Thailand. And we had a lot of local content. So it wasn't just the general sort of Bangkok stuff. We had a lot of niche articles. So we're like, okay, well, let's expand on that and just focus on travel around Thailand. And we went all in on that. So that was the first thing. And just focusing on Thailand grew our traffic to almost 80,000 views a month just in Thailand. So that was, focusing on Blue Ocean, going deep on that. The second thing was how to then grow the traffic. And we teach like a pillar strategy in SEO. So with SEO, you need a couple of strong pillars at the top, and then you need to build like your framework underneath. So we call it an authority fortress. So you're basically setting up your pillars. So what's your main pieces of content? What's your core pieces? When you're new starting a blog, you should only pick like 3 or maybe 4 max. So first identify your blue ocean, then pick you want to pick your 4 pillar content, like your 4 strong pieces, your main things. And then you want to build underneath that with supporting articles. So just by doing those 2 things alone will massively increase your traffic. Like we'll take a blogger from 5,000 or 10,000. If they apply that and actually focus on that for 6 months, they'll be looking at 5x in their traffic if they're new into the game. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing for us, which was a bit of a breakthrough, is that we started applying automated email marketing around our affiliate strategy. So we were already making some sort of affiliate income, a couple of bucks here and there and whatever. But it was only when we did these 3 things, when we found our ocean, when we grew our SEO strategy and got our traffic up, and then when we applied email marketing, we were getting affiliate sales, but then people were signing up to our email list, and then they kept coming back to our content during the whole trip around Thailand and kept booking things with us. So suddenly, rather than just making $10 off one person, that one person would book places all the way around Thailand and then spend, we would get $100 commission. So those 3 things combined, we did that pretty well in Thailand. And then we started to do it everywhere. We did it in Vietnam, we did it in Cambodia, we did it in the Philippines. We started to expand out once we had done it in one country. And that worked really well for us. So those were the main things we changed.
I like this concept of the blue ocean, and I think like Tim Ferriss calls it like define your own category, right? As like invent your own category, like one that you can sort of like dominate. But the thing with that is that there is also the other side of it, which is if there's a category that has no competition, you have to ask the question, why is there no competition, right? So maybe it's not a good category to go into. Maybe nobody cares. How do you balance those 2 ideas?
Yeah, this is good. I actually heard you talking about this with Chris, the freelancer, right? You talked about a similar thing when he started his YouTube channel. It was very new and stuff like that. How do you balance it? That's a good question. So I think for me, I would balance. So let me give an example of when we started our online course, right? When we started selling our blogging course. So essentially, when we started selling that, it was it was a blue ocean. Everyone has an online course. Like we only started selling our program like a year and a half ago. Everyone has online programs. It was a really packed red ocean. But we did the same thing. We were like, how can we find a blue ocean within this red ocean and craft out our own piece of this market? And for us, that was, yes, everyone has blogging courses, but nobody was teaching email marketing around blogging. No one was teaching that aspect combined with it together. or if they were, they weren't doing it very well because wasn't big at the time. So that was okay. Let's go into this online blogging space with that element. So I think there's a book. I think it's called maybe Big Idea, or it's about mechanism and what's the unique mechanism about your product. And if you can find that unique, essentially USB, you can then use that to craft out your own blue ocean inside a red ocean space. So if there is a busy thing, that's usually a good sign that the market's picking up, the trends are picking up. So online courses are booming right now, right? So people can ride that wave. Online courses is a great place, but it's also very, very saturated and very red. So if you are going to enter it, you need to sort of find those little blue pockets and find those unique ways that you can enter it. If you're going to do a Facebook ads course, don't just do a Facebook ads course, and I'm talking to a couple of people about it at the moment. And okay, a better option would be to do a Facebook ads course just for course creators, or an even better option would be do a Facebook ads course for course creators who are trying to get to six figures. Really start to just hone in on that, and that will help you.
You mentioned USB recently. What is that?
USP, unique selling point.
Oh, okay. USB. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I have somebody coming on the podcast here soon who is he does finances. So he's like a CFO for hire, specifically for course creators. And I'm like, what a great way to define a niche, like just like that. What about
Absolutely.
how do you factor in trusting your gut on this? Because for me personally, and tell me what you think about this. I would say if you're just getting started, don't trust your gut. But the more experience that you get, I do think that there is something about you get enough feedback that your gut kind of learns. What do you think about that? Do you agree with that?
I do. I think absolutely. I smile because I was like, actually, that's a really good way of putting it, because this is just me. 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when I was just getting into business, I thought I was invincible. My ego was massive. I was like, I know it all. Yeah, I can make money online. All these people are doing it. I can do it. But actually, when you're first getting started, you don't know that much. So if early on you can have a reality check and just be like, look, I am new to this, face reality. I am new to this. My gut might be saying X, Y, Z, but to be honest, I don't have experience. So I probably should go and talk to a smart person or someone who has done this before me and learn from them. Yeah, definitely. Even now, if I do trust my gut on things now, but I'll always seek advice from others and try to get opposing views. Because again, sometimes your gut or your mind can play tricks on you. But no, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, when I was getting started, thinking back on the first business that I ever started, it doesn't take me long now to go, what a terrible fucking idea. It just, you know what I mean? Now it's not hard, but back then you don't have the feedback. You don't have enough experience. I tried to start a two-sided marketplace, one of the most difficult businesses to build. And I was 22, yeah, I got
I
this.
did
Don't
too.
worry about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I did exactly the same thing. When we first got started, we started it. We wanted to get into the online world, and then we were thinking about doing an app, and then I thought we could do it all.
Mhm.
And my gut was like, you can do it all. Draw up a massive business plan. You can raise more money. You can do this. But I wasn't listening to outside people or smart people to get their opinions on what I should do. And if I'd consulted with, I now have loads of different mentors, but if I'd consulted them, they probably would have said, no, you have this business that's doing well, focus in on this and blah, blah, blah. And I would have come to those conclusions a lot quicker than what I did, which which was go off in a whole new direction and make a load of mistakes. But yeah.
What do you think about because it's interesting because your journey has gone kind of you got started and you got your hands dirty, and once you got your hands dirty, maybe you weren't doing everything right, but when you said you went to Chiang Mai, you learned from a lot of digital nomads, and what you learned, you were able to almost immediately put into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that because you put in action first. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but you put in action. And I think there's a lot of people that they know that what they're doing isn't perfect, or they know that they don't know everything, and so they're waiting to learn in order to not make those mistakes. Which way do you think is right? Because I think each has pros and cons to it, but which one would you recommend people go down? I don't know everything, but I'm just going to get started and try to figure it out down the road, or let me figure out as much as I can now so that, I don't have 2 years where I'm not doing it right?
I think definitely action, like definitely action. Take action no matter what it is. If and I think the best way of to learn is by doing. Right, just do it. If you can pick up assets along the way that will help you, sort of, you shouldn't be afraid to fail. But if you can pick up assets, courses, mentors, whatever, who will help you resolve those failures faster, I think that's the best. That's the best of both. But in terms of the people who want to learn it all first so that they don't make those mistakes, that's just not going to happen. Business is about making mistakes. Business is about solving problems and continuous problems, and you have to love that game. So definitely just get started and go for it. Yeah, I think that's the way forward. I think doing it and learning to be okay with making mistakes, failing, and learning from it. I mean, to me, there's no such thing as failures. There's just lessons and things that you learn from them.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a different type of learning that happens when you can apply it, right? So I see a lot of people who are like course junkies and they take every course in the world, but they never really do anything about it. So they can like spew out a lot of like knowledge technically, but they've never really, I don't think you ever really learn it until you do that thing and then it goes wrong or it doesn't work like it should. And you go like, hold on. It almost like forces you to learn it in a different way.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, Let's dive in a little bit into kind of like the revenue of the business. What is, because there's a lot of, like different ways, and you should have, your income should be coming from different places. So as a travel blog, where are some of the main revenues coming from? And what are some of the things that, if you're just getting started, if somebody's listening and they're like, yes, I want to start a travel blog or any type of blog, what are some of those revenues out there that people should look for?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So we actually used to do income reports. I think around 2 years ago we did income reports, where we sort of broke down all the different streams that we had on Adventure New. I think if you go there and go to adventurenew.com and search income reports, you'll find a couple of the old ones. We actually stopped doing it because we used to get a lot of competition that started just copying our exact same keywords.
Mm.
But yeah, in terms of that, the main ways we diversified our income, we affiliates makes up the bulk of our revenue stream. Probably, I would argue 50%. I would estimate around 50% at the moment. This is probably pre-COVID. The numbers are a bit all over the shop, but usually the business, it would be 50% sort of affiliates, 20% ads for us, or 20 to 25% ads, so display ads, all those ads you see on the site. We have a bulk of partnerships, so advertising deals. We work with companies like that, and then also products. So we have digital products, we have guides, we have travel guides on Adventure News separately. So yeah, I think that's 4 different streams. We also do some private advertising placements as well. So if someone wants to put a side banner on, so there's about 5 different streams there. And then even within those streams, the affiliates, what we're trying to do now, because of COVID, is really diversify those affiliates. So we'll have some in the travel space, but we'll also try to make sure there's some other micro niches around Adventure New that will also touch in. So if this goes down, hopefully this affiliate goes up, and we'll try and balance those out. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask in terms of affiliates. Like, what do you mean? Like, is it like Amazon affiliate? Is it, affiliates from like booking sites and stuff like that? Like, what are some of the different affiliate revenues that you have?
Hmm. That's a good question. Trying to think how I can explain it without revealing all of our business things.
What, you don't want to spill the secrets?
No, 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 no. So obviously we do a lot with hotels. That's probably one of our biggest. We do a lot with travel insurance. So World Nomads are great. Safety Wing are great. Insurance worked really well, obviously during COVID as well. That was one of those affiliates that bounced up. So those are sort of the main ones that everyone knows. Yes, we also do Amazon. What we've started to do more now, because Amazon are cutting they're slashing their commissions a lot. We tend to go,
Amazon's dick.
yeah, we tend to go more private. So we're reaching out to the companies and trying to see like if they're on other programs or if they have their own, special affiliate deal. And a lot of them do. And a lot of them like double your commission as well. They'll increase your commission rate. So yeah, we're looking at that. And we've done that with a couple of our products that we used to sell on Amazon. We now go direct and have switched to different affiliate programs. Yeah, I think those are the main ways. And then whatever affiliates, There's some holiday companies that we work with, which obviously are not doing well at the moment during COVID. But yeah, for us, it's mainly gear, hotels, that type of stuff. And then there's also some like niche ones. If someone is new to blogging and they're going into yoga or they're going into DIY or something like that, you can have a look. There are other programs. Just type the type of hobby and then affiliate program, and you'll find amazing ones. You can affiliate retreats in Bali, yoga retreats. You can affiliate DIY kits. You can affiliate glamping. Glamping's taken off at the moment, or like yurts. There's like yurt stuff, yurt life, and there's all these cool affiliate programs that are away from Amazon or away from the booking.coms and the big ones. There's all these micro ones. One thing I would suggest if someone does have a blog is to look at their top 20 articles and actually think, Google that place now and think, what are people doing now? Maybe there's glamping there. Okay, try to add some glamping affiliates. Okay, maybe there's, I don't know off the top of my head, but something else, and just try to add more unique affiliates. If you can, obviously work with Get Your Guide and Amazon and these big ones, but also try to look for the sort of special affiliate programs, because you usually then, instead of getting 3 or 4%, you'll get 8 or 12%. And those are some of the big things you can do.
Gotcha. I had a mentor who used to say that the only thing keeping you from earning 6 figures was your mindset, and the thing that was keeping you from earning 7 figures were your operations. So I want to dive in and talk a little bit about operations, because I'm sure that what people see, underneath it, there's a lot of different moving wheels. So what are some of let's talk first about hiring, right? Because I imagine it's not just you guys anymore. At what point did you bring someone new on to help you guys run the business, and what was that position?
So we've had a couple of people come on, and we've had some people leave, and over the years, the first one for us was a partnerships manager and advertising manager for Adventure New. We used to do a lot more partnerships, so we filled that. The way I went about it was like, after I've solidified that revenue stream, I then need to pass it on to someone to run it. So that's that kind of way I thought about it. Since then, we don't do a lot with partnerships anymore, and we've automated that whole process. So if you go to Adventure New and you click contact, we have a whole inquiry form, and it automates the process. It sends the rates, it follows up all automatically. So I sort of automated that role in a way. So that was a couple of years ago. Then about 2 years ago, we hired a writer and an editor for Adventure New to start to run it full time. We have had a Facebook agency in the past, but we let those go. That was a bad mistake. And I took over the Facebook ads. And then we also have some VAs as well, who are great, to help us like formatting all the stuff. But the way I think about hiring, and again, it really depends on why you're building the business. Some people are building businesses to scale up to millions and to make a load of money. And then some people are building businesses for a lifestyle business, right? Who just want to travel. So I really think about, what do I want? And then like, how can I just maximize my time doing that thing? So for me, I love to learn. I love to learn things. So I'm not the type of person that likes to do the same thing for a long period of time. So once I had learned how to do sales and partnerships with Adventure New, I outsourced that, or I automated it. Then, once we had sort of the SEO stuff down for Adventure New, we outsourced that and then passed it on. So the last year, I've been doing a lot of Facebook ads for Blogging Fastlane. Now I've got the Facebook ads working, and I've learned how to do that. I'm ready to hire someone to pass that on to allow me to do something else. So the way I hire is because I like to learn and do different things, and I hire in that way. It might not necessarily be the right way, versus the way I look at it. So yeah, I think it really depends on the person itself. But the one thing I would say is, if you can hire, and if you're already making a few $1,000s and you're scared to just delegate or let go, give it a try, because it can change your life. Like, working with great people it does change your life.
Yeah, around that, working with great people, you got to find the great people first, right? So what are some of the things that you look for when you are hiring to make sure that, like, I'm pretty confident this is the right person for our team versus not? What are some of those things that you look for when you're hiring?
Yeah, so for us, it's culture, like culture above everything, like the vibe we get. We'll jump on calls. So when we were hiring for Adventure New, we put up an application on our website, said we're hiring a writer, we're hiring an editor, and we posted it in the Facebook groups where bloggers, where digital nomads were, a lot of the probably spaces me and you hang out, Chiang Mai digital nomads or whatever. And part of submitting an application was they had to do a video. And that made a lot of writers and editors uncomfortable because they're usually writers and editors, but in order to even get an interview, to get past the next stage, they had to submit a video. And we wanted to see that because the type of people, our culture is very, we're go-getters, we're digital nomads, all of us are remote, all of us are traveling, none of us work on a time schedule, none of us have a certain amount of hours, it's all KPI driven. So we wanted to find that type of person. And then, yeah, after that interview, we then got on a call with them. And I think we interviewed around 8 people or 6 people for these positions, and it was mainly about the vibe we got from them. We had a scorecard, and we made them score themselves. So we had like a list of requirements for the role. So how good are you at affiliate marketing? How good are you at SEO? How good are you at editing? And they had to rate themselves and then explain their ratings back to us. So that was one of the things that we picked up from, I'm not sure what book that was from, maybe High Output Management, but was get the people who you're interviewing to score themselves based on their roles. And then that will give you a lot to talk about. Why did you score yourself? Oh, I noticed you scored yourself a 9 for SEO. That's really impressive, blah, blah, blah. Why do you think this? And then you'll also get a sense if they're open to feedback or if they're open to learn or if they think they know everything. You'll quickly really open up a conversation within that hour. So yeah, those were some of the things that we did.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you guys ever have anybody who's like, I'm a 10 all across the board? Was that just like an immediate, like, okay, that person's not coming on?
Yeah. No, we didn't actually. No, we didn't. But yeah, if I did see a 10 across the board, then obviously they're not someone that can, that is open to learning, I'm guessing.
So did you not were you submitting these job openings only on these Facebook groups where digital nomads were already hanging out and you kind of like avoided things like Upwork, for example?
Yeah. We didn't do Upwork. I'm not sure why. We just wanted full-time people. There is other job boards that we've recently tried out. We've tried DC Jobs. I'm part of the Dynamite Circle. We've tried them. They're really cool as well. Uh, but for us, we've just had the best applications from chatting inside of groups. I think my partner, Anna, my co-founder as well, she's always interacting in these groups. There's a lot of people in them. So
Mhm.
that's the way we've done it. And we've usually reached out to the people that run the groups and checked if it's okay to post, that we're looking for someone. But if not, I would check out job boards like Remote OK and DC Jobs and a couple, and you can list there. We just found that the type of people we want are the people that are on the road all the time. They're traveling, because obviously we were looking for a travel blogging position and just really remote people. So that's why we kind of focus more on the group aspect, because that's where they were. They were traveling around.
Yeah, I have to give a plug to the guys over the DC. The Dynamite Jobs board, I think, is like turning out to be really phenomenal. They've made some
Yeah.
really cool upgrades to it recently, and I think it looks great. I like the direction they're headed in.
Mm.
You mentioned that you don't really pay per hour, that you focus on KPIs. And I think that's really smart because, with everyone that's kind of gone into remote work, I've had friends who have just reported horror stories about the way that the companies are trying to make sure that they're working, right? Like I have a friend who told me she's like, I need to move my mouse every 10 seconds, or like I get my pay docked for that hour, or something crazy like that. How do you manage, because I do think this is a big problem right now where everyone's kind of starting to figure out the tech of how to actually run the company remotely, right? Like everybody's got Slack, everybody's got Zoom, the tech is kind of figured out. But I think a lot of companies aren't figuring out the managing, that the fact that the managing needs to change. You're not in an office anymore, so you can't really manage your people the same way. And I think the pay structure is a big factor of that. Who cares how many hours somebody's spending in front of the computer if they're having a 50% output? If somebody spends half the time but hits their things, why should they have their pay docked? But I do think that that comes with a difficulty of how do you actually track that? How do you do that? So what was your plan around managing that sort of pay structure?
Yeah, that's really good. So I'm probably guilty of this, and I can share like what I've done this year because I've gone back and forth. When COVID happened, although I took time to relax, I was also like, we need to be working harder and faster. So I introduced Clockify into our business, which was asking people to just track their time. I didn't say we have to do X, Y, Z or per day, but I did want to know where time was being spent. But I think for remote companies, if they are doing that, it's either they don't trust their people, or they don't understand the business well enough and have a grab on their sort of goals or their targets or their KPIs well enough. And I think I was guilty of the second one. So I definitely trusted my people, but I didn't know the exact KPIs they should be driving or the exact things that they should be moving the needle on. And that made me a bit panicky. So I was like, oh, I need to watch the time and blah, blah, blah. So since then, we've let go of the time tracking thing. We only brought it in for a couple of months to experiment with it. But now what we do and how we manage it is we use the OKR system. Have you heard of the OKR
Mm-hmm.
system? Yeah. So objective and key results. So you set an objective for someone, they will agree to that objective, and then you have key results for that objective. And the key result is a mix of a quantity and a quality measure. So to give you an example, for blogging, the objective might be to grow the traffic to Europe content. And then the key result, you want a quality and quantity. So the quantity would be to publish 20 articles a month. And then the quality would be, over each article has to be over 1,000 words or whatever it is. That's just an example. So we every quarter agree these OKRs with our staff. We set their targets, we set their goals for the quarter, and then they go away and work on those goals. So for far as I'm concerned, like you said, if they spend 5 hours a day and then they surf for the rest of the day or whatever, as long as they're hitting the OKRs, then I know that's a good output and we're getting a good ROI and it's working and the team is functioning, but they can control what they do. If teams are still sort of micromanaging the remote employees, I do think it's probably a mix of they don't have an exact handle on what moves the needle in their business. But that's just some businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are other businesses. There's a lot I don't know in terms of running developers, remote developers, and other things. I'm not sure, but for my business anyway, and for a few, I think small online businesses, if people are micromanaging, it's because of either those things: the trust or not understanding the targets well enough. And for me, I made a mistake with the targets, but now we've got better at setting those and really letting our people breathe again, because they had freedom for like a year. And then during COVID, we had to get a bit more strict, but I realized that was actually the wrong thing. Like, we didn't need to get more strict. We just needed to set probably bigger OKRs, and they would have worked just as hard, just as fast, but on their own time schedule. So yeah.
In terms of tracking time, I really like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Time Doctor before. Liam Martin, the founder, was on the podcast, and he is a big proponent of kind of what you're describing, where he's like, I don't track people's time. I don't, I don't give them like, hey, you need to work 8 hours a day, even though he runs a time tracking tool. And that to me was really strange. And what he said is that he uses that for data. And I really, really love this concept, because he's like, look, they, set your goals, but then we track your time to see like, okay, you're working 25 hours a week and you're hitting your goals. That's great. But you're working 15 hours a week and you're having trouble hitting your goals. So then we'll kind of say, we have a conversation and say everybody else on your team tends to work more in the 25 to 30-hour range and they hit their goal. So maybe that's something that you can adjust. And I love that idea of tracking the time to collect data on like helping your employees improve, as opposed to slapping the wrist and saying you worked 7.5 hours as opposed to 8 the other day, and like that's not good.
Yeah,
Um, I
absolutely.
w- I, I want to
Yeah.
clarify, when you were talking about setting OKRs. So, do you guys, as sort of managing team, you and Anna, sit down and figure out what the OKRs are going to be for the next quarter or the year or whatever, or do you allow your team to be in on the conversation and help set their own OKRs?
So, firstly, before I answer that question, yeah, in regards to the timing, what you just said, 100% agree with that. That's kind of what we do now. We do like time audits. So if someone is struggling, we'll ask them to track their time for 2 weeks or whatever, and then we'll use that data to help modify the stuff. But that's kind of what we've transitioned to. So I'm glad you brought that up. In regards to the OKR stuff, what we do is me and Anna will sit down and plan the yearly objective. What's the goal for this year? So for the objective for this year was to grow what we call our Fastlane family, which is blogging Fastlane. So we have a load of Fastlane students. That was our main objective. And then, we said, and then we do quarterly objectives. So what's Anna's objective? What's my objective? We'll set our own ones and our own key results. And then we'll say to our employees, okay, we feel that to hit the main objective for the year, that your objective should be, maybe this or maybe this. What do you think? And then we'll get them to sort of decide what their objective is, what their key result is. And they will, in a meeting, we'll talk about it with them and they'll get to decide what it is. Obviously, we'll kind of have final say to say if we agree, but usually it will be them to we'll be like, okay, well, we really want to grow in this place. So do you agree that this objective is right? Or do you want to change it? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I like that, but I want to add this. Okay, well, what's the key result? And they'll commit to it. They'll set them themselves.
Yeah, I think this is where like culture becomes really important, and kind of where culture goes from this thing that's really nice to talk about and means, beer on tap or whatever you find in these startups, versus something that actually something that's actually in place where the rubber meets the road sort of thing. Because like I know from the DC guys, like what they've done with a lot of their employees is they make sure they hire the right people. And then they say like, hey, what do you want to work on?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you, like, hey, here's our goals. How do we do it? Like you go and you do your own thing. So for them, it's really big to hire entrepreneurial people. And then that culture essentially drives everything through to the OKRs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons you can learn if you are building a team. Again, depends where you are. If you're starting with just VAs or some part-time work, that's absolutely fine. As soon as you start hiring full-time people, that's the key thing there. Actually do take time to hire, like in the hiring process. Take more time during the hiring process rather than rushing it and getting the wrong people. Because if you find people that are just, intrinsically motivated or driven and just want to do it and want to learn, your job will be so much easier. I'm really lucky. My team is awesome. The people on there are awesome. And I just see it. I'm like, okay, this is objective and this is this, and they just go for it. But I've also worked with people in the past who have just not fit the culture, and I took too long to let them go, and I didn't realize. And that's can completely change the situation. So if you're looking to hire, just the best way to motivate a team, and my friend always says this as well, Luke, the best way to motivate a team is to just find people who are naturally motivated and believe in what you're trying to do. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk a little bit about in the same general sphere, but about like personal productivity, because Nathan mentioned something else to me. He said, hey, you got to reach out to Tom on email because he doesn't do social media. He only does it for 5 minutes a day. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So with that in mind, I'm curious, first of all, where did the 5-minute thing come from? But also, I think one of the big, let's talk about that first, because I'm going to make the first mistake of podcasting, which is don't ask too many questions at once. So tell me about the 5-minute thing, and where did that come from?
Okay, so the 5-minute thing, and it's actually ironic because you've caught me at a different time as well, where I've started doing more personal branding now. But let's talk about the 5-minute thing first. So when I get a goal in my head, like when I get a target or a goal, I really think, we've talked about this with Naval. He talks about leverage, right? And like, what are the biggest things, or what are the main things you can do to move the needle? So if I've got a goal, I really think about what are the biggest things that I can do to move the needle. And for me, social media just wasn't one of those things for the last 2 to 3 years. When we were building Blog and Fastlane, it was making an amazing product, and that was going to move the needle, and running Facebook ads, that was going to move the needle. Social media, or some organic social media, for me just wasn't as big of a leverage as those two things. So I just removed it from my day. So I just, was like, well, I only need to spend 5 minutes. I catch up with my good friends on Zoom calls and stuff like that all the time. But I'm not into sort of scrolling and stuff like that. I just didn't think it was going to benefit me, or watching stories. It's not what I do. So yeah, that's where the 5 minute thing came from, and I've stuck to it for a very long time. I mean, if you ask anyone who's known me for a long time, when I first started traveling, I actually I actually didn't even own a phone. So when I first left to travel, I sold my phone, I sold everything, and I was traveling. I think I didn't have a mobile phone for about 3 years. Like, I think that's
Wow.
about the time, about two and a half years. Yeah. And this was only, again, like 7 years ago. So it was quite new, and I didn't have a phone for that time. Yeah, so I like to optimize my time, and social media didn't fit into the day, or I didn't think it was worth it. Now, however, I'm my two businesses they've got good foundations. I've got a solid team. I'm loving what, it's all sort of working really well. The new things I want to do is I want to code, and I also want to launch a podcast. So if I'm launching a podcast, I need a bit more of a personal brand, right? So that's why I've started now doing social media. And I think instead of 5 minutes, it's now, I think, around 20 minutes a day.
That reminds me of my friend Jason Moore from Zero to Travel, who has been like traveling for like decades. Like the dude is just, I think he was maybe born on the road, but he has these stories of, I'm a young traveler. I didn't start traveling until like 2000 and, well, like, I mean, I've always traveled, but until like I really started traveling all over the world, it was like 2015, 16. And he's like, yeah, man, in like 1997, like we didn't have phones. And I was like, how did you like Google Maps? Like, how did you save your favorite cafe? It's like to me, the phone is such an important tool in traveling that he's like, yeah, man, we use payphones, like it's like, what in the world? So, but how did you manage that? Because that's like, how did you like track that?
Ah, okay. That I was gonna say, when I first started traveling, Lonely Planet was my Bible. I just used that for everything, before Google Maps and everything. How did I track it? I just used on most new phones now, on Samsungs or iPhones, they have the digital well-being settings, so you can set
Mm,
timers on when it cuts you off your apps. So I set 5 minutes, 5 minutes for everything. And
gotcha.
I allowed myself some time to check in with my family on WhatsApp and stuff like that. But I just, and even now I've started on Instagram now for the first time in a long time, and I've started to do more stuff online again. But I still limit myself. I think now it's on 20 minutes a day, and I'll do it in blocks. So it'll be 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and then that's it. It's away.
That's a perfect segue into I kind of want to talk a little bit about like personal productivity and how you structure your day, because I think that's something that's really difficult for a lot of remote workers and digital nomads, because when you are free to create your own schedule, sometimes it can be really difficult to actually do that. So how do you structure your day? Like, how many hours a day do you work, and what works for you in terms of a personal, on a day-to-day basis, your personal schedule?
Yeah. Okay. So again, I like to experiment a lot with what I do. So I've gone back and forth. A couple of months ago, if you'd asked me that question, my day was really scheduled out ahead of time. I used to schedule my calendar on a Sunday, and I would have it down to like boom, 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 boom. Like, wake up at 6, do the gym, meditate from 7:30 till this point, and everything was really sort of mapped out. Start work at this time, and I would start work probably around 9 and finish at 5, and have an hour in between for lunch, and another half an hour for a walk or whatever. And I really I would say, over optimized my time. But now I've changed to, what are the most important things to do every day. And for me, a morning routine is really important. Like, I have to train in the morning, I have to meditate, I have to journal, I have to set my intentions for the day. And if I do that, everything else sort of falls into place. So now I've gone the other way, and I'm experimenting with what is it like taking everything off the calendar and just having that morning routine. So that's currently what I'm doing now, and I'm playing around with that and seeing where it's like. And so at the moment, my average day would be, now I'm waking up around 6:30 or 7 o'clock. I'll train for an hour. I'll meditate. I'll journal. I'll have a nice coffee. Me and my girlfriend will go for a walk, and then I start work around 10 or maybe 10:30, and then usually I finish work around 4, and then I'll probably read for an hour and a half before dinner. And we'll have dinner, we'll hang out with some friends, or I'll read again, or we'll watch a movie if it's a weekend, usually something like that. But now it's a lot more relaxed and chilled. For me, I'm actually finding it helps my productivity because I'm not as, what's the word, like I'm not overly optimized and sort of pushed to doing things. I can breathe a little better. That works for me. I've tried the hyper optimized calendar time. I did try that, but then when I learned more about my DNA and my type, if you go to Myers-Briggs and do the personality test, the 16 personalities, I think it's called 16personalities.com. I actually bought the book and I read it, and my personality type, we tend to try and over optimize, but actually we function at a higher rate and a better rate when we're giving ourselves more time to breathe. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. So I think, yeah, check out that book, 16 Personalities, learn about your DNA type, and then learn about when are you the most productive, and then, start to allocate time like that for yourself.
What personality is that? What's the personality of the 16 that it is the one that you described?
Yeah, so I don't know. Have you done the test yourself? Have you done the 16
Hmm.
personality test? Yeah. Okay, so before I used to be the entrepreneur type, but now I think the exact thing is, I think I'm ENTP. I'm the debater type. They call it debater, and it's like an analytical thinking person. I'm extroverted, but I like to have deep conversations, thought-provoking conversations. And if you go deeper into that stuff, there's a thing called, or they call it inferior function. So every DNA,
Hmm.
every personality type has what they call an inferior function, and that's like the opposite. It's like the little devil on your shoulder sort of thing. It's the opposite. It tries to pull you in a different direction, and you should be aware of what that inferior function is, because it tries to pull you in that way, but you actually are a lot better, a lot happier, a lot more optimized, a lot more productive when you do what's more natural to you. So for me, my inferior function is that thing to sort of over optimize, tried to schedule too much, tried to plan too much, or tried to set too many goals. That's my inferior thing. I actually get a lot more energy if I'm given space to breathe, if I'm allowed to be creative and decide, right, I want to code for 4 hours today, or right, I want to work on Facebook ads today. That's more important. I get bursts of energy like that. So that's just my type. And this I think is really important, what you're saying. I mean, you run a great podcast. You talk to loads of people. You talk to productivity people, and I've seen like some productivity people will be like, you need to be really intent. You need to set your intentions and plan your calendar and have everything scheduled down to a T. And I think that's right for some people, but it's actually more important to learn about yourself and learn about what works for yourself. And that's what I've had a bit of a battle with this year. Is I've read productivity books, and it's like, schedule this, plan this, and you should be doing this. And then I've done all those things, and it hasn't necessarily made me more productive. So I think the first step is just being aware of your personality, how you thrive best, how you're most productive, set your goals, and then see, oh, when I was doing this, did I hit my goals? When I was doing this, did I hit my goals? And then most importantly, was I happy in this period or this period? Do you know what I mean? Like, see what makes you more happier, see what makes you more productive. You have to experiment with it as well.
Yeah, I think I think productivity is kind of like diet. Like
Hmm.
there's always the next new best thing that you need to do, and then like everybody's like, no, this is what's really great. And then like,
Yeah.
6 months later, it's like, no, you got to do this. Like, I remember when there was like this whole thing about like if you wanted to be the most productive, you were supposed to like not sleep like 8 hours. You're actually supposed to like break it up across the day. So like you were supposed to like sleep 45 minutes and then like work for 4 hours and sleep 45 minutes. And it's like now you think about it and they're like, that is idiotic. Like that's such a terrible idea. But there was a time when like every productivity dude in the world was like, this is what you got to do. So I think I totally agree with you. It's like, really understand yourself. And I'm like you, I tend to over optimize. Like for me, it's like nerding out over the newest project management tool.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's at one point you need to understand that it's more about like you're kind of like fun, but it isn't necessarily like helping, and just kind of stick with what's working. So
Yeah, absolutely. We've done that. This year we introduced Monday.com to our team, and I had my whole team schedule their week, and we had timelines of where they're spending their time and what they're working on. And after 6 months of using it, the team doesn't really like it. It's they're less productive. And then personally myself, I've started using a tool called Roam Research. Have you used that?
hmm
I
yep.
love it. I love it. And I found that a simple to-do list for me, is all I need. And then I get everything done. I don't need to timeline stuff out. So yeah, definitely just do what works for you and experiment with it.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun for me. But before we sign off, let people know, tell us about the course. Where can people find out more about it if they want to check that out? And also, you did mention that you're working on a podcast right now. And I know that's something that's going to be coming out soon. I believe it's not out yet. So, where can people find out more about the podcast when that launches?
Yeah, so I am spending more time on social media these days, so I do allocate a little bit more time. They can find me on any, Instagram or Twitter at Hey Tom Rogers. So just Hey Tom Rogers, my name. They can connect with me then, shoot me a DM if they want to connect. And then the podcast will be live on my website, tomrogers.com. So the podcast is called Upgraded Thinking. And the idea is, we've kind of touched on it here in this podcast, where, one productivity guy will say to over optimize this or XYZ, and then another productivity guy will say do XYZ. One fitness expert will say keto, one fitness expert will say intermittent fasting. So the idea with my podcast, Upgraded Thinking, is to bring all these types of people and combine them into one episode. So each episode, it might be, well, what is the best diet at the moment that's working? And that episode will feature 5 different perspectives on that topic, and then break it down. So that's what I'm going to be doing. That's hopefully coming out next year. That's going to be on my website, tomrogers.com.
I love that. I don't know if you know Taylor Pearson. He's in the DC, but he said this tweet that he said, if you're ever asking for like these sort of things, the right thing to look for is when somebody answers, well, it depends. Because most of the time, if they give you just a simple answer, it's like, where's the poop?
Yeah.
Something isn't right here. So
yeah,
Tom,
absolutely.
thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And all the best, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. It's been absolutely awesome.